Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the North Central session of the Arizona Office of Tourism's regional webinar series. Today, we'll be walking through insights for the state, the North Central region, and Yavapai and Gila counties. Just a quick note, some of the numbers have been rounded for easier viewing, so they may not reflect the exact figures. All right, let's get started. We have an exciting session ahead of us. First, we'll kick things off with our Arizona-specific data, where we'll take a closer look at what's happening across the state. In 2024, Arizona welcomed about 41.2 million overnight visitors, which remained about the same compared to 2023, up 7% compared to last year and 1.3% compared to pre-pandemic levels in 2019. More impressively, total visitor spending reached about $29.7 billion, a 1.4% increase over last year and a significant 16.2% increase compared to 2019. Let's take a look at travel spending across the state over the past 3 years. The orange line represents 2022, the blue line represents 2023, and the purple line represents 2024. While the lines may appear close together, 2024 actually outperformed both previous years. If you look at the trend line, you'll notice that spring continues to be our high season, and 2024 followed that same pattern. In fact, travel spending in March 2024 reached about $4 billion. Let's take a look at statewide visitation for 2024 on a quarterly basis, compared to 2023 in purple and 2019 in blue. Overall, overnight visitation in 2024 shows modest growth compared to 2023 and has surpassed 2019 levels in the second and fourth quarters. This growth is being driven primarily by the leisure and resident travel segments. For example, in Q2 2024, resident visitation was up a strong 7%, and leisure visitation increased 4.6% compared to the same period in 2019. Moving on to our last state-focused section, international visitation. In 2024, Arizona welcomed about 5.3 million international visitors, with over 85% of those visitors coming from North America, which consists of Canada and Mexico. Europe is the second largest market, with about 8.3% of visitors, followed by Asia Pacific with 4.4%. If you look at the orange chart on the right, we can see that international visitation is growing steadily from 3 million in 2021 to 5.3 million in 2024. While we haven't recovered to 2019's 6.1 million visitors, things are moving in the right direction. Now that we've covered what's happening across the state, let's zoom in on the North Central counties, Yavapai and Gila, to see what's happening there. Let's take a look at travel spending in the North Central region and its two counties, Yavapai and Gila. In total, the region brought in over $1.7 billion, up 0.4% compared to 2023. Yavapai County makes up the majority of this spending and grew by just under 1% compared to last year. Meanwhile, Gila County saw a slight decline, down about 1%, highlighting some differing trends within the region. On this slide, we're looking at travel impacts for Gila County. Each bar represents a different category, including total travel spending, tax receipts, employment, accommodation spending, food service spending, and earnings. In 2024, Gila County's tourism economy saw about a 1% decline in visitor spending and tax receipts, while employment and earnings rose slightly. Accommodation spending experienced the largest drop, down 1.5 million, or 2.7% compared to the previous year. This highlights the typical lag between revenue and labor. Spending responds quickly to changes in demand, but businesses adjust staffing and pay slower to retain trained workers. As a result, employment and earnings, or wages and benefits, and owner income often lag behind real-time shifts in spending. Now let's take a look at the same data, but for Yavapai County. Direct travel spending grew by almost 1%, up 10 million compared to 2023. This growth was driven by healthy increases in accommodations and food service spending, both up over 2%. However, employment and earnings were down about 4%, likely because businesses tend to adjust staffing and wages a little slower. With total travel spending increasing by less than 1%, it might make sense that businesses remain cautious about expanding staff or raising pay. Now that we've covered some high-level insights, let's dive a bit deeper and look at spending by accommodations. From the charts, we can see that Gila County is primarily a day trip destination, with nearly half of visitor spending on accommodations coming from same-day visitors. Hotels, motels, and short-term rentals make up over 32% of spending, while visitors staying in private homes contribute to about 13%. Compared to last year, these patterns have stayed fairly consistent. Moving on to Yavapai County spend by accommodation. In contrast to Gila County, hotels, motels, and short-term vacation rentals take the lead and account for almost 60% of visitor spending on accommodations, while day travel represents 28% of spending, followed by private homes at almost 9%. Compared to 2023, the market shares of accommodations types in 2024 have remained fairly stable. Moving on from accommodations, let's take a look at spending by commodity for Gila County. Commodities include arts and entertainment and rec, food service, food stores, local transportation and gas, and retail. Arts, entertainment, and recreation remain the largest category, increasing about 0.5% to nearly $127 million. Food service spending rose about 1%, and food stores increased about 1.5% compared to 2023. Areas for growth include accommodations, which declined almost 3%. Local transportation and gas is down 8.5%, and retail down about 1.5%. These declines suggest an opportunity to encourage visitors who are already enjoying their local activities to extend their stays overnight rather than limiting their trips to a single day. Now let's turn to Yavapai County, which saw modest but broad-based growth in visitor spending from 2023 to 2024. Accommodations led the way, growing by $12 million year over year to reach $476 million. The second largest category, food service, also showed strong growth, increasing by nearly $6 million to $286.7 million. Modest gains were seen in arts, entertainment, and recreation, up $4 million, and food stores up almost $2 million. Moving on to our next section, let's turn our attention to lodging performance. On this chart, we're looking at short-term rentals like Airbnbs and VRBOs in the North Central region. The data shows growth in both the supply of available properties increasing, plus about 7%, and more significantly in consumer demand increasing about 8% compared to 2023. The chart on the left shows that the total supply of rentals has increased 7% in 2024, while the chart on the right highlights positive growth in demand, about 8% increase in comparison to 2023. In our next section, we will focus on airport passenger traffic in the North Central region. For state-level data, please go to our website at tourism.az.gov. On this chart, we're looking at two airports, Prescott Regional Airport and Phoenix Sky Harbor. While Sky Harbor isn't technically in the North Central region, it's Arizona's busiest airport, with many visitors flying in there before exploring other parts of the state. Looking at Phoenix Sky Harbor trends, domestic passenger traffic in 2024 climbed above both 2023 and 2022 levels for the most of the year. The chart shows a dramatic spike in March 2024, approaching 5 million domestic passengers. For Prescott Regional Airport, the data shows a clear seasonal pattern with peaks in the fall. Total passenger traffic in 2024 exceeded 55,000, up 2.6% from 2023, which totaled 53,600. Moving right along to state and national park visitation data for the North Central region. First, let's take a look at state park data for the North Central region, which includes 7 parks shown on the chart to the right. The park with the highest visitation is Dead Horse Ranch, followed by Tonto Natural Bridge. Overall, year-to-date visitation to the region state parks increased slightly, up 0.8% from 495,800 visitors in 2023 to 499,900 visitors in 2024. The monthly trends show 2 clear peaks in spring and fall, with March 2024 reaching the strongest spring peak of the past 3 years at 59,200 visitors. Now let's take a look at national parks in the North Central region, which includes 3 parks shown on the chart to the right. Overall visitation continued to rise in 2024, reaching about 519,000 visits, up from 501,000 in 2023 and 512,000 in 2022. The park with the highest visitation was Montezuma Castle's National Monument. Looking at the monthly trends, March and April were the busiest months, with roughly 75,000 visits in March and 65,000 in April, keeping with the pattern of spring being the most popular season. Let's shift over to gross sales in the North Central region. First, let's take a look at gross sales in Gila County. In 2024, the retail and restaurant sectors continue to grow, with restaurants reaching roughly 516 million and retail reaching about 120 million. In contrast, visitor spending on hotels, motels, and amusements declined. While lodging and amusement saw downturns, it's encouraging that retail and dining are still achieving growth. In Yavapai County, hotel and motel sales grew from 403 million in 2023 to 413 million in 2024. The amusement sector saw even stronger growth, rising from 53 million to 59 million. Retail remains the largest and most stable sector, posting a modest 0.7% increase in 2024. Restaurant sales also edged up from 631.4 million to 635.4 million. Overall, Yavapai County's gross sales data highlight a maturing tourism economy. We've now reached our final section. Let's take a look at what visitors in the North Central region are doing. This chart shows the main reason visitors come to the North Central region. Travel to visit friends and relatives has declined sharply, down 6.4 points, while touring and outdoor-focused trips have grown significantly. In 2024, touring became the top travel purpose, surpassing visiting friends and relatives. This shift highlights a move from social visits toward exploration and outdoor activities. While visiting friends and relatives remains important, the 6-point drop shows changing traveler preferences. Now let's take a look at how visitors stay in the North Central region. Hotels remain the most popular choice, up 45%, used by 45% of visitors, and their market share grew almost 2 points compared to the last year. Country inns and lodges have gained points, about 2, and the biggest changes were declines in other lodging types. Timeshares fell roughly 5 points, staying in the home of friends and relatives dropped roughly 4 points, and resort hotels decreased by almost 3 points. Now let's shift focus to Gila County visitor summaries. Gila County successfully converts 74% of its visitors into overnight guests and maintains a strong 65% repeat visitor share. However, the average time in the destination is a bit short at just 1.9 days. The visitor origin data shows that almost 62% of all trips to Gila County start in Phoenix. A stark comparison exists in the length of stay between visitor types. Visitors from the top in-state drive markets, Phoenix and Tucson, stay for an average of only 1.3 days, while long-haul visitors from markets like Chicago and New York stay for about 6.5 days. Moving on to Yavapai County's visitor summary. We see a strong overnight market with 76% of visitors staying overnight and 63% being repeat visitors. The average length of stay is longer here at 2.4 days compared to Gila County's 1.9 days. Phoenix is still the largest feeder market, though less prominent than Gila counties. Los Angeles and Tucson play bigger roles, combined bringing in nearly 8% of visitors. LA visitors tend to stay a bit longer, averaging 2.6 days, while Tucson visitors stay around 1.7 days. Visitors coming from further away, like Chicago, stay the longest, over 6 days on average. That wraps up our webinar on the North Central region of Arizona. For more details on which counties make up each region, you can refer to this map. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue with the next session in the Arizona Office of Tourism's regional webinar series. For more regional data, please visit us at tourism.az.gov and navigate to the regional profile section or scan the QR code. If you have any questions or on what we covered today or other research questions, please feel free to contact us. We hope the data we provided today is helpful. Thank you for joining us.